So if you stop hearing me, please state that you're not hearing me, because I can't tell. Okay, so I think you can be able to see my screen now. Are you able?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to define what research is. So please, I would like you to write it in your book, what research is. We'll use this one for now because it's an online class. So we just say that research is just a search for knowledge, just a search for knowledge. So when you are doing any research, you're just looking for knowledge, and then you want to transmit that knowledge. But you want to use that knowledge to do this process in a scientific way. So one can also define research as a scientific systematic search for pertinent information on a specific topic. So remember that, because you have to write scientifically and you have to do the scientific process, which we shall discuss hopefully next week. So research is also an academic activity. Yeah, it is also an academic activity. Like for you, it will be an academic activity. So for example, someone called Clifford Woodley said that it comprises defining, redefining problems, formulating hypotheses or suggested solutions, collecting, organizing, evaluating data, making deductions, and then you reach a conclusion, and at last carefully testing the conclusion to determine whether it fits the formulated hypothesis. We're also going to have a section on hypothesis. What is a hypothesis? So hypothesis is just a statement that you make that you're trying to either prove or disprove in your study. So by now, since you've been going to the ward or since you've been in that course, you should have identified a problem or a topic that you have a specific interest in, and then you start defining issues about it that according to you are not clear. Yeah, so you want to redefine the problem, or that have not been covered. That means you want to define the problem. You will then get a hypothesis. Yeah, maybe you can give any topic. For example, if you want maybe to talk about parasites, you want to say that perhaps there's a new type of malaria. So you'll say maybe you are hypothesizing that there is a new species of malaria. You want to prove or disprove it. Then you will collect information using specific methodology, yeah, where you'll have organized and evaluated your data. Then you shall make deductions from your data, not from other people's data. Then you conclude your data. Then you see whether or not your hypothesis was correct. Was there a new species of malaria? Has malaria changed its presentation? That is what you're going to do. So start thinking of a topic so that as we go down the course outline, you're able to see it will be easier for you next semester. Okay, so research is also an original contribution to existing stock of knowledge. Yeah, you're not just doing research for the purpose of saying it is research, but you want to contribute to knowledge. So in the pursuit of truth, yeah, with the help of study, observation, comparison, and experiment. In short, search for knowledge through objective and systematic method of finding solution to a problem. The systematic approach concerning generalization and formulation of theory is also research. So the term research refers to a systematic method of enunciating the problem. You are formulating hypotheses, collecting facts, analyzing the facts or the data, and then you reach a conclusion. And then towards the end of the conclusion, you will make generalizations. And then you will also, there it's missing, you will also disseminate your data, yeah, to the people who you are concerned about. Yeah? You disseminate your data. So what are the objectives of research? So please, I'd like you to write this down or print this paper. But the best thing is to write it because you don't need the entire paper, you just need specific things. So what are the objectives of your research when you're doing research? And the purpose of research is to discover answers to questions through application of scientific procedure. Remember the word there, scientific procedure, systematic methods. You don't just do what you want. The methods have already been formulated. So the main aim of research is to find out the truth which is hidden and which has not yet been discovered. Yeah. So though each research study has its own specific purpose, you may think of research objectives as falling into a number of broad groups. Number one, you want to gain familiarity with a problem. That's what we call it. You are exploring. You're exploring. Number two, you want to portray the characteristics of a particular situation, group, or individual. So you want to describe it. You want to describe a situation. So research can also be diagnostic. Why? Because you want to determine the frequency with which something occurs. Okay. Research can also be to test hypotheses. You want to test a hypothesis between two variables. For example, the new symptoms of this condition are because there is a new species of Plasmodium, or hypertension is associated with increased body weight, or lifestyle diseases are associated with poor eating habits. So those are two relationships, and you want to test that hypothesis. So you will state that hypothesis at the beginning of the research. So these are the objectives of research. The objectives of research. So I hope we are together. So what is it that motivates research? Yeah, for you, for example, it is an academic exercise. It is part of your course. So you want to fulfill a specific, you want to complete the course so that you can get your degree. So it is part of your course content or your degree content. Maybe there are some benefits. Perhaps you're being paid. Yes. So to get a degree, maybe you're going to be paid. Number two, maybe there is a problem that is unsolved. You've realized there's a problem that is unsolved in your community. You want to solve it. Maybe you just enjoy doing research. Maybe you're trying to be of service to society. Maybe you just want to be called daktari. You want people to realize that you do things, that you can conduct a project. So this is what motivates research. In your case, we have said it is academic. There are many other things that can also affect research. Maybe you're trying to sell a product. Maybe you work for an organization. You want to know whether your methods are working, whether your product is successful. Okay, so there are many ways. For you, primarily, you want to gain the skill of research, because very many students take this course for granted, and then they're calling you urgently as late as yesterday night because the presentation is tomorrow. And yet this course has been covered. Okay, so please take it a bit seriously. Start thinking of a topic, even as we move ahead, even in other subjects that you do, like pharmchem or pharmaceutical technology, so that you are able to get something. And remember, this topic, although you're doing it academically, where you'll be employed, you may be employed to sell cars, or to sell vegetables, you will also be conducting research and the method will more or less be the same. So what are the types of research? What types of research are there? The basic types are descriptive research. Descriptive research. What is descriptive research? It is surveys, fact-finding of different kinds. So you want to describe the state of affairs the way it exists. Yeah? You want to describe the study methods of students in your unit. So you are describing it. You will have this possibly a questionnaire. You will question them, or they will fill in a questionnaire with specific questions, and then you can describe. Yeah, describe something. So it can be descriptive, or it can also be analytical research. There you use information that is already available, yeah, and make an analysis of this information. For example, I can take your marks from year 1 till year 4, and I can come up with specific conclusions based on your marks. Yeah, because the information is already available. Analytic research. Okay. Then we can have applied research. Applied research. Applied research aims at finding a solution for an immediate problem facing a society or a business. Yeah. So you want to gather knowledge. You want to apply the technique. It is just pure research. You want to find out why something is happening. For example, you want to find out, is there a relationship between your marks and maybe the dropout rate? Yeah. If there's a relationship between the blood pressure, yeah, and blood sugar, weight, or other factors. So you want to apply that research to identify a problem. Okay, so it can be applied research. Then it can be fundamental research. Here you generalize a problem, a theory. Okay, then it can be quantitative research. It can be quantitative research. Quantitative research, meaning it is based on measurement, quantities. Yeah, a phenomena where you want to know the kind of the numbers, where people, what are the weights, where are people eating what they're eating, what are the blood sugars, blood glucose, quantitative. Or it can be qualitative. Qualitative meaning you are interested in how people think about a specific topic. Quality, their opinion on the research. Qualitative research to determine the behavior of a specific factor in the human race. Yeah. So qualitative research. Quantitative numbers, qualitative, you want to find about feelings, emotions, and behaviors. It can be conceptual research. That is, conceptual research is related to some abstract idea or a theory. For example, it is used by philosophers. It can also be empirical research. Empirical research is where research is appropriate and proof is sought that certain variables affect other variables in other ways. It can be a longitudinal research, one-time research. You're looking at information along a specific timeline. It can be a field research. You're going out to the field. It can be a laboratory research. You're conducting it in a laboratory. You can simulate your research. You know, you can have, for example, an animal study. It can be a clinical research. You'll be conducting it in a clinic, a hospital, a case study, to diagnose something. It can be exploratory. You're trying to find out the type of something about a topic you're exploring. It can be historical. Historical meaning what? You will choose documents. You will use old data and then come up with conclusions. Okay, so there are many types of research. This is not conclusive. So just have a look at this and then determine what kind of research project you want to participate in, depending on the data available or the topic that you want to cover. Then research approaches. How do you approach your research? So research can either be quantitative or it can be qualitative. It can be quantitative or qualitative. So quantitative, it involves generation of data in quantitative form. Yes, in quantitative form. This approach can be inferential, it can be inferring, it can be experimental, that means it could be in the lab, you could be simulating the research to get the quantitative data. So what is this inferential approach? The inferential approach is to form a database in which you infer characteristics of a population. It means you survey research where a sample of population is studied. You infer. For example, you have 1,000 students in cohorts, but you cannot study 1,000 students. So you will infer your research by picking N or a sample, and that is how you will infer. So from your N, you will use a specific formula. There are many formulas. You select maybe a population of 300, and then you use those 300 people, or sample of 300, to infer the conclusion to the entire population. Okay? So it can be inferential. You are inferring your data. Data can also be experimental. Yeah? That way you go to the lab, you decide you're going to study, for example, the constituents of a specific plant. So you'll collect your plant, you will conduct an experiment, you will dry the plant maybe, you will extract the plant, you will experiment by finding out what is in the plant. You can test whatever is in the plant on animals or bacteria. So you're experimenting. So you can also have a simulation approach where you use an artificial environment to generate data. Yeah, you simulate. The word to simulate is you are trying to see if a specific behavior can be applied to a system. So all those are quantitative. You will get quantitative, you will get numbers. Data can also be, or the research can also be qualitative. So what is qualitative? You want to get to obtain from a population what are their behaviors, what are their opinions, what are their attitudes towards, for example, the course of pharmacy. So you'll question them on their attitudes, their opinions, their behaviors. Okay, that is qualitative. So the information you get there is qualitative. Okay, it generates qualitative data. You can be asking questions, you can be conducting key interviews or group interviews or in-depth interviews to get as much information as you can, because that information that you get, that approach is qualitative. You are interested in qualitative data. And in this case, you may not even interview a lot of people because you need a lot of in-depth data. Okay, so qualitative data. So I hope we're together so far. If you're not, please stop me. So what is the significance? Where do we do research? Where do we do research? Yeah. For us, we've said, for you, it is economic. It is academic. It can also be economic if you're running a business or you want to find out if your clients' tastes have changed or something has happened, or why your patients are behaving in a specific way. So it can be an economic, it can be academic, it can be for the purposes of government, you always see so many government researches going on because they want to test or apply specific policies into the economy. Research can also be for planning. Yeah, you want to plan something, you want to do a specific uh, introduction of something into the society or into your group. So you want to plan it. So you want to find out um, is your are you using your resources in a correct way? Yeah. So you want to conduct like market researches, yeah, to see whether or not you're reaching your key target. Okay. Research can also be to study social relationships, yeah, to answer specific societal problems. Yeah, what do you want to answer? Questions. For example, what is affecting the pass mark? Yeah, what is affecting the the harvest? You know, so a social to study societal problems to seek answers to specific problems. Okay, so and there are very many other reasons why people do research. You can think of one or two others, and you can add it so that you are able to determine where are you going to do your research. A part of it being academic. So, like we said, it is academic, it can be for analysts, it can be for students, you're writing your project, it can be for philosophers. Maybe you want to have new ways of thinking, you want to test them, and then that is why you do research. So, this course is known as research methods, but there is research methodology. Okay, so research methods encompass research methodology. So research methods may be understood to be all the methods and techniques used to conduct research. So research methods are techniques. So they refer to the methods that the researcher uses to gather information. So research methods. Research methodology will be the technique that you will use. So research methodology is a systematic way to solve the research problem. Okay, so which methodology will you use? So research methods is a technique. It refers to the methods that the researcher will use to perform the operation. Research methodology is a systematic way of solving the problem. Okay, so if you look, for example, when you go to the library, the methods are what? You want to analyze the data, the documents that are there, the books. What are the techniques you are using? Yeah, you'll be writing notes, you'll be maybe filling in a specific questionnaire, you'll be analyzing content based on maybe topics. Okay, you're listening to maybe they have tips or videos you'll be watching, then you analyze it. Okay, so differentiate research methods from research methodology. So methodology is the way you're going to use uh, the system to solve your issues. And the methodology, depending on the type of research you will do, you need to perform a methodology that can be acceptable in the scientific sense. Okay, so when we talk of research methodology, we not only talk of research methods, but also the logic behind the methods we're using. Why are you using that method? Why are you using questionnaires? Why have you used that formula to calculate your sample size? Okay, so when we talk of research methodology, we not only talk of the methods, but also consider the logic behind the methods we use in the context of our research study and explain why we're using a particular method or a technique or why we're not using others so that the research results are capable of being evaluated by other researchers. Okay, so I hope we are together. If we are not, kindly stop me. So today is just introduction. We're trying to determine what is research methods, what is research methodology. Okay, so I've been saying about this scientific method. What is the scientific method? Yeah, we said everything should be done scientifically. So the scientific method is in the pursuit of truth. Okay, so you're trying to use a method that is well recognized as you look for truth, so that the method is repeatable. So the scientific method is one and the same in branches of science, and that method is a method of all logically trained minds. So it should be logical. You have decided to select a topic, you have done a topic, you've done a title, you have a working title, you have gone to literature. You have looked at the literature and decided that yes, the study can be done. You have cited your literature. Yes, you're not just getting things from wherever. You are citing your work, you're using scientific method. You then go to the field and decide, okay, let me, before you go to the field, let me get ethical approval. Yeah, why? To see if within your peers, your methods are acceptable. Okay, whether you're handling humans or animals, are you using the correct ethical procedures? We'll cover this in detail later, don't worry. Then you decide, let me use, out of my 1,000 students, I will use 300 students. Which method will I use to select my 300 sample from the population? You have to look for a specific equation or reason why you're using it, using that method, maybe a method used previously, you cite your method. Okay, how you will collect your data, it is a scientific method. Yes, it is a logical way of doing things. So the ideal of science is to achieve a systematic interrelation of facts. So I'm not reading everything, I don't know if you can see if I highlight. I just want you to look at the important parts. So you want to achieve a systematic interrelation of facts. I think you can see if I highlight. Scientific method attempts to achieve the idea by experimentation, observation, logical arguments. Your argument should be logical from accepted postulates and a combination of these three in varying portions. Which three? Observation, yes, logical argument, and experimentation. So in the scientific method, logic aids in formulating prepositions explicitly and accurately so that their possible alternatives become clear. Further logic develops the consequences of such alternatives when these are compared with observable phenomena. It is possible for the researcher or the scientist to state which alternative is most in harmony with the observed facts. Okay, so when you're using the scientific method, it has to be a logical method that you can be able to support while you're using that method. I've chosen this sample size because I'm collecting my data using this method because I'm doing this research because there is a gap. How do you know there is a gap? You have gone to other literature, not from Wikipedia or from rumors, but you have still seen that there is a problem somewhere, there is a gap. Remember, the research should be novel. No point of repeating information that was done another time. So you're trying to get a novel or a gap, a novel idea. So explanation is done to test hypotheses and to test new relationships. If any of these, if any among these variables, so you're trying to discover new relationships among the variables, okay? Conclusions are drawn on the basis of the experimental data and you generalize the data. So you're going to then get conclusions from your data. So conclusions drawn on the basis of experimental data are generally criticized for either faulty assumptions, poorly designed experiments, poorly experimented experiments, or faulty interpretations. Okay, so you cannot, if you have a poor way of conducting your research, then you have your conclusions are not valid. If your method to collect data is poor, that means you designed your experiment in a flawed way. Your conclusions, your interpretations will be wrong. So, as such, the researcher must pay all possible attention when developing the experimental design and must state only probable inferences. Okay, so the purpose, like you cannot be doing a study on uh, the marks of the student, behaviors of the student, study subjects, and then at the end of it, you conclude that the marks are poor because the nutritional level of the students is inadequate. Yet you never had any questions about nutritional level. You just decided at the end of it that these people are not eating well. That is why the marks are poor. They had very many problems, but you did not address the problems in the first place when collecting the data. So your conclusion must be correct based on your method, but your method must be correct. Otherwise, you'll come up with faulty conclusions. Your assumptions must be correct when starting the data. Yeah, what assumptions are you making in the first place so that you're able to collect data on those assumptions. The purpose of survey investigations may also be to provide scientifically gathered information to work as a basis for researchers for their conclusion. So the scientific method, what are the characteristics of the scientific method? The scientific method is thus based on certain postulates. Yeah. So what is the scientific method based on? The one you will be using. It relies on empirical evidence. So the evidence that you will be providing in your research has to be the one you're researching is the correct thing. We cannot be researching on marks and end up talking about the weather or nutrition or other factors. So the evidence that you supply in your research should be leading you to a conclusion. Okay, the method should be correct and the conclusion should be correct. So it relies on empirical evidence. Okay, it utilizes relevant concepts, and these relevant concepts you'll get them from other data. Later on, as maybe you become senior, you can come up with your own methods or concepts, but currently you'll be expected to rely or use relevant concepts in your paper. It is committed to only objective considerations, yeah? Not things you're getting elsewhere, rumors. It presupposes ethical neutrality. That is, it aims at nothing but making only adequate and correct statements about population objects. Yeah. It results in probabilistic predictions. You can predict from your data. Its methodology is made known to all concerned, and therefore you can replicate the data. Which method did you use? If I use your method, you tell me you weighed the tablets using this scale, you crushed them, you did this extraction, you did this experiment. If I do the same thing, will I get it? It aims at formulating general axioms or what can be termed as scientific theories. So your method of the scientific method encourages rigorous, impersonal mode of procedure dictated by demands of logic and objective procedures. You're not cooking there in your room deciding you shall select 30 people. Then you decide it's too cold, let me fill in the questionnaires from my room. Then you decide, let me collect the data that was done last year and use it. Then you're just doing your own thing. So it has to be a process. There's logic, there's objective procedure. So accordingly, scientific method implies an objective, logical, and systematic method, meaning it is free from personal bias. You decide you don't like this student, so you say they are failing because they didn't read, yet your data does not support that. So it is a method to ascertain demonstrable quantities of a phenomena capable of being verified. It is a method whereby the researcher is guided by rules of logical reasoning. It is a method where the investigation procedure is carried out in an orderly manner, and the methods implies internal consistency. Okay? So that is what research is. That is what research methodology is and research methods are. And it is what the scientific method is. So class rep, are you 30 in your class? Faith, are you 30? Normally?
No,
How many are you?
around 50 something.
So where is the rest of the class? Ama, is it because it's the first class?
I'm not sure.
So yesterday night, people are calling me in a panic. The presentation is tomorrow. How will they present? What will they present? It is this unit that you're going to present. There's no other unit. So the rest of the 20, they will tell us. So what is the importance of knowing how research is done? Okay. For those, so the study of research methodology, it gives the student the necessary training to gather material, arrange indexing, card indexing, participate in field work when required, training in techniques of collection of data and appropriate particular problems, in the use of scientific questionnaires, in controlling experimentation, in recording evidence, sorting out, and interpreting it. So the rest of the students will not have this skill. And you, if you don't read these notes, you will not have this skill. So you want to know all these things. How will you go to the field? Before you go to the field, how will you write your proposal? Yeah, a proposal, you're proposing what you're going to do. Okay, you're going to collect information on the on what, which topic. You can choose any topic. You can collect information on pediatric infections in Kenyatta Hospital. Yeah, so you've identified a topic. So you want to then write a proposal using the scientific methods and methodology, so that you are able to then use that proposal to make a plan on how you're going to collect the data, which population numbers will you use, how will you collect the data, how will you have your inclusion and exclusion criteria, how will you record your information, how will you conduct your statistics, how will you sort and interpret your data. So what is the importance for you? So importance of knowing the methodology of research or how research is done stems from the following. Yeah, the importance of knowing the methodology of research or how research is done stems from the following. Number one, for one preparing himself for a career in carrying out research, the importance of knowing research methodology and research techniques is obvious. So suppose you want to finish your 5th year and join the research field in whichever field, whether it can be pharmacy or it can be another field at all, the methods remain the same. So the knowledge of research methodology, it provides training, how you will do your work. It gives you the confidence. You can go to the field and find out maybe which cosmetics are people using, where are they using it? Is a cosmetic causing this kind of effect? Can you create your own cosmetic tool to fight or to introduce a new product in the market? So those aspiring for careerism in research, yeah, must develop a skill in research techniques. So another importance is knowledge of how research will calculate the ability to evaluate and use research results with reasonable confidence. The day you are presenting your research, whether for the next semester or 2 years down the line, for whichever job you'll be doing, you are able to have the confidence to provide your research to wherever you'll be working, because you're very sure your method is correct. Yeah. When one knows how research is done, one may have the satisfaction of acquiring a new intellectual tool, which can become a way of looking at the world and judging everyday experience. So it gives you ability to make decisions, intelligent decisions. In this scientific age, all of us, in one way or another, are consumers. You can use research methods to judge the adequacy of methods that have been obtained. So you can use them to even read papers, yeah, determine what works for you in your house, which soap will you use, which school will you take your child, which road will you be using, who will you vote for, such a thing. So we're now going to take upon the research process, and this diagram, I don't know if you can see this diagram, shows us the research problem, how we will now conduct the topic. And as you can see down there, you will define a research problem, for example, and I'm giving many examples to show you how easy it is to come up with a problem. There's so many problems in the medical field. We have already talked about several. We can now add a new one, the use of a paracetamol in pediatrics. You know, did it work? Yeah, is it working? Maybe you've realized that pediatrics paracetamol is not working to reduce fever. Yeah, so you define a problem. Okay, what could be wrong? You review the concepts and the theories. That means you do literature review. Yeah, you go and see it used to work before, maybe it's been working, it works. Yeah, so you review literature review. Why are we using paracetamol for fever? And what the national guidelines say about using this drug for management of fever? Yeah, so you do what we're calling a literature review. We'll cover all these topics in detail. Then you formulate a hypothesis. You decide maybe the reason paracetamol has been working, now it's not working, is because there's something wrong with the drug on the market. So you'll hypothesis that the paracetamol in the market is faulty. So what will you do? You will then design a research. How will you design that research? You say, okay, I will collect various samples from the market, and I will determine that the amount of paracetamol, the amount of the active ingredient is inadequate. Yeah. But how will I design this research method? How will I sample my samples from the market or the pharmacies? How will I determine what to collect, how to collect, when to collect? Yeah. Then you collect your data. Yeah. That's how you execute your study. After you collect your data, you then analyze your data to test the initial hypothesis. Now, not all studies have a hypothesis. The one I've given you is just an example. So now you want to test. You analyze your data. Is it true that paracetamol syrup is supposed to have a specific amount of the paracetamol chemical per 5 ml, and this one has less? So all your samples, you will say most of your samples possibly had less. You analyze your data. You will use methods, determined methods to analyze your data. You then interpret your report. After you interpret your report, you will now write your report. You then conclude your report. Then you disseminate your information. If you are presenting information, you will then write PowerPoints and present your information. You can write to journals to alert people of a problem, to give them new knowledge. That is what we shall do in this course. Okay, that is what we shall do in this course. So today you have defined research, you have defined scientific methods, You have defined scientific method and research methods. You have an overview of the research flowchart. Okay, it's a very summarized one, but it's an overview. Okay, so next week we shall start. How do you then know the research problem? How do you determine? How do you know that there is a gap, yeah, in the problem? We shall start that next week. Do you have any questions? So Faith, I want to collect the first assignment from, are you 30? You said you're 30. 30. From only the ones who came today, I want you to go and write, let me see. So you are 30. So I want 30. Can you hear me, Faith?
Yes, we are 38.
Yes, you just write me. No, are you 38 here? I can see, no,
Yes.
I've removed me. You are 36. Am I correct?
Yes.
So from those 36, I want you to identify a research gap. I hope you're writing, identify a research gap. And then propose a research topic. You identify a research gap, and then you propose a research topic. That is probably half a page, surely, or less. So I only want 36. When I meet you next week on Wednesday morning, you give me 36 papers and I'll grade it. You identify a research gap, yeah? Meaning we want to do the first stage of this diagram here. Where is it? This one. We want to define a research problem. Okay, so to define a research problem, we want first to look, where is the gap? Yeah, how do we, you want you to go and look for a research gap. And how do you look for a research gap? Yeah, you've had an interest in something since you came in, I don't know how many years ago. You've decided that you have now, there's a problem that has been disturbing you. Is it malaria, or is it the diet in the place where you're from, or something? A research gap to do with pharmacy. Yeah. And then you present it to me, you give it to me on Monday. Then from the research gap, you formulate a working title, a working title. Yeah, that means I want you to do, define your research topic. When you're defining the research topic, you think of keywords that describe your work. This is called a working title. The reason it's a working title is because it can change as time goes. For example, you can start by, you can be defining, for example, the example I was giving you, pediatric infections, do pediatric infections respond to empirical antibiotics? Yeah, only to reach there and discover that you can change the topic a bit. So it is a working title. So you can now change it as you move down, you discover you can refine the topic. So you get me the gap, then you formulate a topic, because the topic is now what will guide your how you will work on your paper. Are we correct? Does anyone have a question? Are we clear?
Yes.
So who is it not clear? Because now, and then tomorrow, can you request whether you can join in to listen to the people who did not listen to whatever has been taught for the past 4 years as I present tomorrow, and the ones that listened? Yeah, because you should come up with a title. So this other group is coming up with a title. They have come up with a title. They're presenting a proposal. So let me make it clear to you, because those calling me are sounding confused, as if they didn't do the unit. Once you come up with your topic, you're supposed to write a proposal. So you're proposing what you're going to do. So tomorrow there'll be the presentation of the proposal. So there'll be a PowerPoint presentation. That PowerPoint presentation should have the key sectors we've talked about briefly today. It should have the title, okay? It should have an abstract. We'll discuss it later. It should have the bit of the research methods that you will use. Where are you conducting your data? Which method will you use? How will you analyze your data? Yeah, how will your research help? So you're proposing before you do the work. You have a proposal. Are we together? You're proposing, you haven't done it. Then you will do it. After you do it is when now you present your data, maybe, I don't know how many months down the line. Okay? So kindly look for a research gap and then propose a working title by the next class, the next unit we are meeting. And I can see the numbers are increasing. I only want the ones who actually joined into my class. So I'm expecting 36 papers on today is when? On Wednesday. Faith, 36 papers. Are we together?
Yes.
If you give me more than 36 papers, I remove yours. Okay, so that is the first step. Okay, so I will send you this document, have a look at it. It defines the things we have done, an introduction to what research is. So then we should, after the next week, after you formulated your title, we shall then do like a background. How do you do a literature review background? Then after that, how to formulate the research questions and research methods. Okay, how to write the literature review, how to conduct data analysis, okay, how to paraphrase your work, and such topics. So unless there's a question for today, we can stop. I send you a few reading materials. Is there any question from the group? So I hope there'll also be no questions when you're doing the actual study next semester. So we can end the class. I'll send you the work just now.